Little Emma had always been a curious, bright-eyed 3-year-old, with a head full of golden curls that bounced with every step she took. Her tiny hands were often sticky with traces of her favorite peanut butter sandwiches, and her laughter filled the modest suburban home she shared with her parents in Willow Creek, a quiet town where everyone knew everyone else. Life in Willow Creek was usually calm, predictable, and unhurried, the kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches and children played freely in the streets without a single worry. Emma's parents, Lavra and Mark, cherished these moments, feeling fortunate for the peaceful life they had built. On a seemingly ordinary afternoon, a disturbance shattered the town's usual tranquility. A neighbor's home had been broken into, a theft so minor it might have gone unnoticed in a larger city. But here in Willow Creek, it sent ripples of unease through the community. Reports came quickly, and soon police officers were at the scene, their flashing lights reflecting off the neat sidewalks and manicured lawns. The local news had already started circulating rumors, and townspeople gathered curiously at a safe distance, whispering to each other about the incident. Among the responding officers was Officer Thompson, a seasoned veteran of the Willow Creek Police Department. With years of service under his belt, he had seen his share of disturbances, but he also carried a profound understanding of how to handle delicate situations, especially those involving children. By his side was Rex, a formidable yet gentle German shepherd, trained meticulously as a K9 unit. Rex was not just a dog. He was a protector, a partner who could sense fear, courage, and intention in equal measure. Known throughout the town for his calm demeanor and impeccable skill, Rex had earned a reputation as a hero in multiple cases. Though he carried no arrogance, only loyalty and instinctive intelligence. Emma, who had been peeking curiously from her living room window, watched the scene unfold with wide, unblinking eyes. Her tiny fingers pressed against the cool glass as she observed the flashing red and blue lights, the uniforms moving swiftly, and the tall, imposing figure of Rex stepping out of the police car. To her, he was both frightening and fascinating, a creature so large and powerful, yet somehow emanating a quiet confidence that didn't feel threatening. Lavra knelt beside Emma, gently holding her daughter's hand to reassure her. "It's okay, sweetheart. They're just here to help," she whispered. Emma nodded, though her eyes never left the dog. There was an undeniable sense of curiosity in her gaze, mingled with the natural caution of a child who knew that some things were bigger and more serious than her little world could fully comprehend. As the investigation continued outside their home, Officer Thompson and Rex worked with practiced efficiency. The dog sniffed around the yard, ears twitching, tail held in a controlled, steady wag. His movements were precise but gentle, a perfect balance of authority and restraint. Emma's mother tried to redirect her daughter's attention, pointing out the birds in the yard, the blooming flowers, even the neighbor's cat darting across the lawn. But Emma remained captivated by Rex, who paused to glance back at the little girl through the wrought iron gate, as if acknowledging her silent fascination. The situation outside was delicate but manageable. Nothing violent had occurred, and the stolen items were minor, but the presence of a K9 unit added a sense of seriousness to the event. Officer Thompson noted Emma's quiet observation. He could sense the child's curiosity and empathy, recognizing something special in the way she watched Rex, not with fear, but with a tentative respect. Later that day, after statements had been taken and the scene secured, Lavra received a call from the local courthouse. The family was asked to appear in court as witnesses for a minor hearing related to the case. It wasn't common for children as young as Emma to be involved in any official proceedings, but the judge wanted to ensure all parties connected to the incident were present, and the police believed it could also serve as a learning moment for the young girl, an introduction to civic responsibility, even in a gentle, age-appropriate way. On the day of the court appearance, Emma's excitement was mixed with nervous apprehension. She clutched her favorite stuffed bunny, Mr. Snuffles, tightly to her chest as her mother helped her into a small coat. The courthouse, a stately building of gray stone and grand wooden doors, loomed before them. Its size and formality seemed almost overwhelming, even to Laura, who had been here before for unrelated matters. Emma's small hand slipped into her mother's, fingers curling tightly for reassurance. Inside, the courthouse smelled of polished wood and paper, with an echo that made every step sound louder than it should. Officers and lawyers moved briskly through the halls, and Emma's eyes followed them all, though her attention quickly returned to Rex, who had arrived with Officer Thompson for the court session. The dog sat patiently near the entrance, ears pricked, tail still, watching the humans around him. Despite his size and training, there was a calmness about him, an aura that immediately put Emma at ease, even amidst the intimidating surroundings. As they approached, Rex tilted his head slightly, nostrils flaring to take in the new scent of the child. Emma's nervousness gave way to a cautious curiosity. The first interaction was tentative. She stretched out a tiny hand, hesitant yet determined. Rex sniffed gently, then pressed his large nose softly against her palm. Gasps of surprise rippled through the courtroom. Adults whispered about the remarkable calmness of both the dog and the girl, noting how unusual it was for a child to approach such a trained police animal with confidence. From that first moment, a quiet connection began to form. Emma giggled softly, a sound that broke the tension in the room. Rex responded with a low, reassuring whine, acknowledging the child's innocence and bravery. Laura's eyes filled with tears of pride, recognizing that her daughter had instinctively understood something that often eluded grown-ups, that strength and gentleness could coexist. Officer Thompson watched silently, proud of both his partner and the child who had so effortlessly bridged the gap between human and Gother. K9. The family was led to a seat in the courtroom, Emma's hand still resting lightly on Rex's fur. For the first time, the courtroom felt less intimidating. Emma whispered shyly to the dog, and though her words were simple, they carried the weight of trust and understanding. Witnesses and spectators glanced over, captivated by the unlikely bond forming before their eyes. A sense of warmth replaced the usual stiffness of legal proceedings, and even the judge's stern expression softened slightly at the sight. The day's events marked the beginning of something extraordinary. While the theft itself was minor, the interaction between a 3-year-old child and a police dog would leave an unforgettable impression on everyone present. Emma had entered a world of authority, procedure, and rules, yet she navigated it with honesty, courage, and an innate empathy. Rex, trained to protect and enforce, had found a companion in a child whose innocence allowed him to show his gentler side. And in that moment, both learned something invaluable about trust, understanding, and the quiet power of connection. Little did anyone know, this first meeting would not only capture the hearts of those in the courtroom that day, but eventually make headlines, inspire community conversations, and remind everyone that even the smallest voices like Emma's could make the biggest impact. The incident, the courthouse, and the police dog were all merely the stage for a story far greater than a simple theft. A story about courage, empathy, and the extraordinary insight of a 3-year-old girl who saw beyond fear and authority to something far more human. The morning sun filtered through the tall, arched windows of the Willow Creek Courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. The building, with its echoing halls and austere walls, carried a weight of history that Emma, at just 3 years old, could not yet understand. To her, it was enormous, mysterious, and slightly intimidating, a place where serious adults spoke in quiet, serious tones, and everyone seemed to know exactly where they were supposed to be. She clutched her mother's hand tightly, feeling the softness of her mother's grip, but also a hint of nervousness that mirrored her own. Lavra tried to calm her daughter, kneeling to Emma's eye level. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered gently, brushing a curl from Emma's forehead. "We're just here to help tell the truth. Nothing scary will happen." Emma nodded, her wide eyes scanning the room, absorbing every detail. The polished benches, the towering judge's bench at the front, the spectators seated in quiet anticipation, all of it seemed to loom over her small figure. From across the room, Officer Thompson and Rex were already positioned near the front. The dog, a large German shepherd with a coat that shimmered in the sunlight, stood alert but calm, tail flicking slowly behind him. His ears twitched, tracking every movement, every sound. Despite his size and strength, there was a subtle warmth in his stance, a controlled gentleness that even a child could sense. Emma's attention was immediately drawn to him, her earlier curiosity at the scene of the theft now replaced with awe and a cautious intrigue. The courtroom itself was alive with quiet tension. Lawyers whispered to each other in low tones, flipping through papers and murmuring legal jargon that only adults could decipher. The bailiff moved efficiently, ensuring everyone was seated properly, and the public attendees, a mix of curious townspeople and family members, murmured among themselves. Casting glances toward Emma and Rex, it was unusual to see a child so small and a police dog so large together in such a formal environment, and the contrast was striking. The judge, a tall man with a stern demeanor softened by years of experience, entered the courtroom and took his place behind the elevated bench. His robe, dark and flowing, added to the sense of gravity that hung over the proceedings. He tapped the gavel lightly, and the room fell silent. A hush that seemed to amplify every small sound, the shuffle of papers, the soft whine of Rex, the quiet squeak of Emma's shoes as she shifted nervously on the bench. Emma's mother squeezed her hand, whispering reassurances, but Emma's gaze remained fixed on Rex. She had never seen a dog like him so tall, so disciplined, yet somehow approachable. The child's imagination worked overtime, picturing Rex as a gentle giant, a protector who could sense her fears even without words. There was something almost magical in the way the dog's eyes met hers, steady and intelligent, acknowledging her presence without intimidation. Officer Thompson noticed the girl's nervous fascination. He had worked with Rex for years and had seen how people, even adults, reacted to the dog. Some were in awe, others intimidated. But children often responded differently. They had a purity of perception that allowed them to see past size, authority, or fear. Emma's curiosity and tentative confidence did not escape him. He made a mental note to allow the child as much freedom as safely possible during their upcoming interaction. The proceedings began with formalities. Witnesses were sworn in, lawyers presented their statements, and the judge listened intently, maintaining order with quiet authority. Emma's father, Mark, whispered explanations to her in small, understandable pieces. The judge is listening to people who saw what happened. We're just telling the truth, okay? Emma nodded again, though her focus occasionally drifted back to the dog. Every so often, Rex's nose twitched as he sniffed the air, and his steady gaze reassured her in a way words could not. A lawyer approached, motioning for the family to come forward. Emma's heart beat faster. She had never stood in such a serious room before, and now she would come face to face with Rex in this formal, unfamiliar environment. Lavra guided her daughter carefully, whispering encouragement. Remember, he's friendly. Just be calm, and everything will be fine. Emma nodded, her small hand still clutching Mr. Snuffles, her stuffed bunny, for comfort. As they approached the front, the courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. The sheer size difference between the girl and the police dog drew murmurs from the audience. Emma's wide eyes took in every detail: the gleam of Rex's coat, the strength in his stance, the calm authority of Officer Thompson kneeling beside him. It was both awe-inspiring and slightly terrifying. Yet Emma felt a strange pull, an unexplainable trust forming in her tiny heart. Rex, sensing the child's presence, shifted slightly, but remained seated, tail wagging slowly. His ears flicked forward, nostrils flaring, to gather the scent of the new, small human approaching him. Children often brought out a different side in canine units, and Rex had learned to adjust his behavior with care and patience. Officer Thompson gave a subtle signal, silently communicating that Emma could approach at her own pace. Emma took her first tentative step, then another. The soft squeak of her shoes echoed in the quiet room. She stopped, glancing up at her mother, who nodded reassuringly. Then, with a deep breath, Emma reached out a trembling hand. Rex leaned forward slightly, sniffing her fingers before resting his massive head gently against her tiny palm. A collective sigh swept through the courtroom, the tension melting into awe and quiet admiration. The experience was transformative. For Emma, the intimidating courthouse became less so, replaced by the calm presence of a creature who was large but gentle, strong but trustworthy. For the courtroom, what should have been a routine, minor hearing became an extraordinary moment, witnessing the unspoken bond forming between a child and a police dog. Even the judge's stern features softened, and a few of the lawyers exchanged amazed glances, recognizing the unusual and heartwarming scene before them. As Emma gently patted Rex, she whispered something unintelligible but affectionate, and the dog responded with a soft whine, tail wagging in approval. The audience watched in near silence, every eye fixed on the unusual but beautiful connection taking place. Officer Thompson's chest swelled with quiet pride. He had trained Rex for years to protect, detect, and serve, yet even he marveled at the intuition and empathy a small child could evoke. That morning in the courthouse was no longer just about a minor theft. It had become a story about courage, trust, and the extraordinary capacity of children to connect with the world around them in ways adults often overlooked. Emma, small and fragile yet incredibly brave, had stepped into a realm of authority and formality and found her own way to navigate it with curiosity, honesty, and a remarkable understanding that transcended her years. The moment set the stage for everything that would follow. It was the first real chapter in a story that would touch hearts far beyond the courtroom walls, reminding everyone that even the tiniest human voices could make an indelible impact, and that sometimes a child's innocence could reveal truths that adults might otherwise miss. As the session continued, Emma remained close to Rex, her comfort and courage growing with each passing moment. The courthouse, once imposing, now felt less daunting. The walls echoed not only with legal proceedings, but with the quiet, powerful connection between a girl and a dog, a bond that promised to leave a lasting impression on all who witnessed it. The courtroom remained silent, the only sounds being the shuffle of papers and the occasional creak of the polished benches. Emma's small hand trembled slightly as she took her first tentative step forward. The polished floor reflected her tiny shoes and the gleaming coat of Rex, who watched her every move with quiet attentiveness. Officer Thompson remained close, kneeling beside his partner, offering a gentle nod to the child. "Approach at your own pace." The air was heavy with anticipation, the adults in the room sensing the extraordinary moment about to unfold. Emma's curiosity battled with a flicker of fear. She had never been this close to a creature so large, so imposing, yet there was something in Rex's calm demeanor that drew her in. His golden eyes, steady and intelligent, seemed to understand her uncertainty. The dog did not growl or shift his weight aggressively. He simply waited, patient and aware, as if reading the child's thoughts. It was a silent invitation for trust, and Emma's heart leapt with a mixture of excitement and caution. Taking a deep breath, Emma reached out her tiny hand. The adults in the courtroom leaned forward slightly, restraining whispers, realizing that even the smallest gesture from the child could change the energy of the room. Rex lowered his massive head, his nose gently touching her fingers. The contact was soft, warm, and reassuring, a stark contrast to the initial impression his size and training might have suggested. Emma giggled softly, a delicate sound that echoed faintly through the high-ceilinged courtroom, breaking the tension and drawing smiles from the spectators. Encouraged, she moved a little closer, letting her hand brush against his fur. It was smoother than she had imagined, almost comforting, and the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest felt steady, grounding. Rex let out a soft, low whine, not of discomfort, but of acknowledgement. It was his way of saying, "I understand you. You are safe with me." Emma's eyes widened in wonder. For the first time, she saw not just a trained police dog, but a gentle, intelligent being capable of connection. The adults in the courtroom were equally captivated. The judge, leaning slightly forward, observed the moment with an unusual softness in his eyes. Lawyers paused mid-sentence, pens hovering over notes, as they watched the unusual interaction unfold. Witnesses, who had been fidgeting nervously, now exchanged quiet glances, sensing that this was no ordinary courtroom scene. Even Officer Thompson allowed a faint smile to escape, proud of both his partner and the child, who together were creating a remarkable display of trust and courage. Emma crouched slightly to meet Rex at eye level, her tiny face only inches from his. "You're big, but nice," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly but full of honesty. The words, simple and innocent, carried a depth that resonated through the room. Rex responded with a soft nudge of his nose, tail wagging gently, an almost imperceptible gesture to show approval. It was as though he understood her completely. And that understanding formed a bridge between two very different worlds: the trained, disciplined world of law enforcement, and the innocent, imaginative world of a 3-year-old. For Emma, the fear she had felt moments before melted away. She found herself fascinated by every detail of Rex, the soft fur behind his ears, the gentle wag of his tail, the way his eyes seemed to sparkle with intelligence. She whispered to him, little words of curiosity and wonder, about his job, his training, and even about his favorite treats, giggling softly as he responded with patient nudges and low whines. The courtroom had transformed from a place of tension to a stage for an extraordinary bond. Officer Thompson knelt beside her, careful to stay close, but allowing Emma the freedom to explore the interaction. "Good job, Emma," he said quietly, a proud warmth in his voice. "Rex likes you. He knows you're safe." Emma's eyes lit up at the reassurance, and she gave a small, confident smile. She reached out to scratch behind Rex's ear, and the dog leaned into her hand, his tail giving a slow, content wag. For a moment, the outside whirled the seriousness of the courtroom. The minor crime case, the formalities of legal procedure faded into insignificance. The spectators were mesmerized. Some whispered softly about the courage of a child who had faced a large, trained police dog with such bravery. Others remarked on the dog's gentleness and intelligence. A few seasoned courtroom veterans, accustomed to the rigid seriousness of legal proceedings, nodded knowingly, recognizing that this rare combination of innocence and discipline was extraordinary. The moment had a quiet power, a reminder that sometimes the smallest participants could have the most profound impact. Emma, feeling emboldened, spoke softly again, this time asking a question that surprised everyone. "Do you help people, Rex?" she asked, tilting her head with genuine curiosity. Rex responded with a gentle whine and a soft paw movement, as if answering in his own way. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath, the simplicity of the child's question cutting through the usual complexity of legal matters. Emma's mother fought back tears, proud and amazed at her daughter's bravery and insight. Encouraged further, Emma began to move around Rex, her small feet barely making a sound on the polished floor. She examined his legs, his paws, and even the tips of his ears, speaking in a low, gentle tone. Each movement and sound from Rex was measured and calm. He had been trained for these situations, yet it was his own instinctive gentleness that allowed Emma to explore and interact without fear. Officer Thompson watched silently, fully aware that this was more than a routine interaction. It was a profound demonstration of trust and empathy. The judge, noticing the transformation in the room, allowed a brief smile to cross his face. He had seen many cases, many witnesses, and many moments in his courtroom, but this, the union of innocence, courage, and trust between a tiny child and a powerful, trained dog, was something rare. The clerk quietly scribbled notes, not for the legal record, but to remember the extraordinary human element unfolding in the midst of routine proceedings. As the interaction continued, Emma's initial fear became pure fascination. She leaned in, whispering to Rex about her favorite games, describing her toys, and even sharing a secret or two. Rex responded with patient nudges and attentive eyes, as if listening carefully to every word. The spectators' eyes softened, the atmosphere lighter, more human, and unexpectedly emotional. It was no longer a courtroom dominated by law and procedure. It had become a stage for a quiet lesson in courage, empathy, and connection. By the end of the first interaction, Emma stood back slightly, a wide smile lighting up her face. Rex, sensing that the initial meeting was complete, gave a final soft whine and rested his head gently on the floor, tail wagging once. Officer Thompson patted the dog, whispering quietly, and then looked down at Emma. "See? I told you he's friendly," he said. Emma nodded, her eyes sparkling with joy and newfound confidence. The courtroom remained unusually silent, not out of tension this time, but in awe. Adults and children alike were touched by what they had witnessed, the courage of a tiny girl facing the unknown, the intelligence and gentleness of a trained police dog, and the extraordinary bond formed in mere minutes. Even seasoned lawyers and officers acknowledged the rare magic of the moment. That first meeting would be remembered long after the minor case concluded. For Emma, it was the beginning of a relationship built on trust and understanding. For Rex, it was a reaffirmation of his role, not just as a police dog, but as a protector, a gentle companion, and a bridge between authority and innocence. And for everyone in the courtroom, it was a moment that reminded them of the extraordinary power of empathy, courage, and connection, lessons that were often overlooked in the structured world of law and procedure. By the time the first recess was called, Emma had already left a mark on the room. The judges, officers, and spectators would talk about the moment for years to come. It was a testament to the idea that sometimes the smallest and most unexpected participants in life could reveal truths far more profound than any legal argument or procedural motion. And in that quiet, sunlit courtroom, the bond between a little girl and a police dog began one that would not only change their lives, but leave an indelible impression on all who witnessed it. After the initial hesitation, Emma found herself growing bolder. The intimidating courtroom, with its towering wooden benches and the solemn presence of the judge, no longer seemed frightening. Instead, it became a place of fascination, a stage where she could explore this extraordinary creature before her. Rex, sensing the child's curiosity and emerging confidence, remained calm and steady, his amber eyes following her every movement with careful attentiveness. There was a subtle rhythm to their interaction, a wordless communication that no adult in the room could fully articulate, yet everyone could feel. Emma crouched slightly to be closer to Rex's level, her small hands brushing lightly against his fur. "You're big, but nice," she whispered again, her voice a mix of awe and certainty. The courtroom, which had moments ago been filled with tense murmurs, and focused attention on legal procedures, fell silent. Even the judge, accustomed to decades of routine, allowed a small, surprised smile to cross his face. It was astonishing how a simple statement from a 3-year-old could command the attention of an entire courtroom. Rex responded with a gentle nudge of his massive nose, his tail flicking slowly in approval. His posture was relaxed yet dignified, demonstrating both his discipline as a canine officer and his trust in the child. Emma giggled softly, the sound like tiny bells in the vast room, and reached up to scratch behind his ear. The dog leaned into her touch, offering a soft, approving whine. The interaction seemed almost magical, a perfect harmony between innocence and trained discipline. Spectators couldn't help but be drawn into the scene. Witnesses who had come to provide testimony now found themselves captivated by a child and a dog communicating without words, yet conveying volumes. Lawyers paused mid-note, and even the court clerk glanced up from her paperwork, eyes wide. The audience felt the warmth in the room, the way a bond could form in minutes between two beings who didn't share a language, yet shared understanding. Emma's confidence grew as she continued to interact with Rex. She began to ask questions, her tiny voice clear despite the courtroom's acoustics. "Do you like to help people, Rex?" she asked, tilting her head. The dog responded with a soft whine and a slight paw movement, as though affirming her assumption. The spectators collectively inhaled, stunned at how intuitive both the child and the dog seemed to be. Emma's words were simple, yet they cut through the complexity of adult assumptions and spoke directly to the truth of Rex's role. A protector, not just a law enforcer. Her mother, Laura, watched with a mixture of pride and amazement. She had never seen her daughter navigate fear, authority, and curiosity with such grace. Emma's father, Mark, whispered softly, "She's incredible," barely audible above the hush of the room. Officer Thompson's chest swelled with quiet pride. Rex had been trained for obedience, detection, and protection, but even he responded differently when faced with Emma's innocence. It was as if the dog understood that she posed no threat, and more importantly, that she was capable of empathy. Encouraged by the gentle reactions, Emma's tiny hands explored further. She touched Rex's ears, felt the texture of his fur, and even ran her fingers along his strong legs. Each time she made contact, Rex responded with a subtle movement, a tail wag, a slight lean toward her hand, or a soft, approving whine. The adults watching could not help but marvel at the precise balance of strength and gentleness displayed by the dog. This was not simply an animal obeying commands. It was a living, breathing presence engaging thoughtfully with another being. At one point, Emma knelt down entirely, bringing her face close to Rex's snout. She whispered something so quiet that only Rex could understand. He tilted his head slightly and let out a soft sigh, a sound that drew a murmur from the courtroom. Even the judge, who prided himself on impartiality and detachment, felt a moment of warmth. The courtroom had transformed from a space of tension and formality to one filled with wonder and unexpected connection. The remarkable part was not just the interaction itself, but what it revealed about Emma. Despite her young age, she demonstrated insight and perception far beyond what anyone might have expected. She recognized, without explanation, that Rex's imposing size and training did not diminish his capacity for gentleness. Her words and actions reflected a clarity that adults often struggled to achieve, understanding a creature not by fear or appearance, but by essence and behavior. As Emma spoke softly to Rex, she began to articulate simple observations that left those present astonished. "You help people, right?" she asked, her voice steady. The dog's ears flicked attentively, his stance relaxed. The statement, though phrased as a question, carried an undeniable certainty. Even the seasoned courtroom attendees, used to navigating complex legal discussions, paused to consider the profound simplicity of the child's observation. Officer Thompson, kneeling beside Rex, whispered gently to Emma, "That's right. He helps people." Emma's face lit up with a bright, knowing smile. She patted Rex on the side, giggling as she said, "I think you're the nicest helper ever." The courtroom softened further, the adults recognizing that the power of empathy and understanding often emerged from the smallest, most innocent voices. As the interaction continued, the bond between Emma and Rex deepened. The child's courage had blossomed, fueled by her curiosity and the dog's calm demeanor. Every gesture, every soft word, seemed to reinforce a silent contract of trust between them. The courtroom, once dominated by rigid procedure, now hummed with a quiet human warmth. Lawyers, officers, and spectators alike felt privileged to witness a moment that transcended ordinary expectations, a reminder that connection and understanding could manifest in the most unexpected forms. Emma leaned closer, whispering her thoughts about how brave Rex was and how much she admired him. Rex responded with a soft nuzzle of her hand, tail wagging once more. Lavra held her breath, afraid to interrupt the fragile magic of the moment. The judge watched with a faint smile, realizing that the courtroom had just been gifted a lesson in courage and empathy from a 3-year-old. The simplicity and honesty of the child's perception highlighted a truth that adults often overlooked. The essence of heroism is not always loud or imposing. It can be gentle, thoughtful, and deeply connected to those in need. By the end of their first extended interaction, Emma had fully overcome her initial nervousness. She stood slightly back, a proud smile on her face, looking at Rex with affection and admiration. The dog, sensing that the meeting had reached a natural pause, rested his massive head on the floor, tail wagging slowly. Officer Thompson gave a quiet nod of approval, acknowledging both the child's bravery and the dog's gentle patience. The courtroom, too, remained still, not in tension, but in awe. The spectators understood they had witnessed something rare, a perfect example of trust, courage, and connection forming spontaneously. Emma, with her unguarded innocence, had transformed the space, leaving an indelible mark on everyone present. Her bravery and insight reminded the adults that sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from the most unexpected places. Even after the court recessed briefly, whispers of amazement circulated. "Did you see how she understood him?" One lawyer murmured. "She just knows," said another. The story of a tiny girl connecting so naturally with a trained police dog would not stay within the courthouse walls. Those present knew it would be remembered, shared, and perhaps even recounted for years. A tale of empathy and bravery that transcended the minor case at hand. For Emma, the experience was transformative. She had entered a formal, intimidating environment and found her own way to navigate it, guided by curiosity, courage, and a profound empathy that transcended her age. For Rex, it reinforced the power of patience, training, and gentle responsiveness. And for everyone in the courtroom, it became a lesson in the extraordinary bond that can exist between humans and animals when trust, respect, and understanding align perfectly. That remarkable first meeting had set the stage for the next chapters of the story. What began as a simple court case involving a minor theft had now blossomed into something far greater, an unforgettable connection between a child and a dog. A lesson in bravery and a glimpse of how innocence could illuminate even the most serious and formal spaces. Everyone in the room, consciously or unconsciously, knew that they had witnessed the beginning of a bond that would leave a lasting impression on the town, the police department, and most importantly, the hearts of those involved. The courtroom was alive with a gentle hum, still reverberating from the remarkable interaction between Emma and Rex. Emma had grown comfortable, moving with quiet confidence around the massive police dog. Her small hand rested on Rex's soft, yet powerful, coat as she whispered and giggled, asking questions that revealed both curiosity and insight far beyond her 3 years. The adults around her were captivated, caught between admiration for her courage and awe at the unusual bond forming in front of their eyes. It was at that precise moment that the courtroom experienced a collective pause. The judge, a man accustomed to decades of testimony, motions, and deliberation, noticed that all eyes were on the child. Lawyers and officers had stopped their busy shuffling, captivated not by the legal proceedings, but by the astonishingly natural interaction between a tiny human and a disciplined, trained canine. Even the bailiff, standing at attention, leaned slightly forward, curious. Emma's mother, Lavra, watched with a mixture of pride and quiet apprehension, unsure what her daughter might say next. Emma's tiny voice, clear and steady despite the grandeur of the room, cut through the stillness. "He helps people, not hurt them," she said, pointing gently at Rex with her chubby little finger. The words, simple and innocent, carried a weight that none of the adults had anticipated. A hush fell over the courtroom. The simplicity of her statement, delivered with the conviction only a child could muster, resonated in a way that the formalities of the law could never achieve. The judge blinked, momentarily speechless. He glanced down at Emma, then at Officer Thompson, and finally at Rex. The sheer clarity of her observation struck him deeply. Years of legal training, adult reasoning, and courtroom experience suddenly seemed secondary to the wisdom of a child who had understood something fundamental about justice, protection, and empathy in mere seconds. Witnesses exchanged astonished glances, some leaning closer, unsure if they had really heard the words correctly. Officer Thompson knelt beside Rex, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "That's right, Emma," he whispered gently. "He helps people." Rex, sensing the importance of the moment, leaned slightly into Emma's tiny hand, a subtle nudge of acknowledgement. The dog's steady, calm demeanor complemented the child's brave words perfectly, reinforcing the extraordinary truth of her observation. The courtroom's tension, previously rooted in minor legal proceedings, melted into a mixture of amazement, warmth, and admiration. Emma's statement highlighted something that adults often overlooked, that heroism and protection were not always about intimidation or authority. Sometimes they were about trust, kindness, and a commitment to helping others, no matter the challenges. A 3-year-old had just reminded an entire courtroom of a lesson that even the most seasoned professionals could forget. Lavra felt tears prick at her eyes, a mixture of pride and disbelief. Her daughter had not only approached a massive, trained police dog with courage, but she had also expressed a profound insight about purpose and morality in words so simple, yet so profound. She gently wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered to Mark, She just said what everyone was feeling but couldn't say." Mark nodded, equally moved, glancing around at the other spectators whose faces mirrored his own astonishment. Even the lawyers, often detached and focused solely on procedure, were touched. One quietly muttered to a colleague, "Did she just define the meaning of heroism?" The murmurs spread, low at first, but gradually building into a chorus of quiet appreciation. The courtroom had become less about law and more about humanity. A small child and a police dog had reminded everyone present that courage and kindness could exist together, and sometimes the smallest voices could speak the loudest truths. Emma, emboldened by the silent admiration, took another small step forward. Her hand rested lightly on Rex's head, and she whispered, "You're brave. You keep people safe." The dog responded with a soft nuzzle, his amber eyes meeting hers with an intelligence and warmth that seemed almost human. The courtroom felt suspended in time. Adults were fully aware that they were witnessing a rare and extraordinary moment that would be remembered long after the minor case was concluded. The judge, regaining composure, allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. "Well," he said, his voice softer than usual, "it seems we have a very insightful young witness today." There was a quiet ripple of smiles and nods throughout the room. Emma's words, delivered so innocently and clearly, had not only broken the tension, but also elevated the entire atmosphere, infusing it with a sense of wonder and hope. Rex, trained to respond to commands and detect danger, had instinctively adapted to Emma's presence. His behavior was not just obedience, it was an unspoken recognition of empathy and trust. The dog's gentle responses, combined with the child's candid honesty, had created a moment of mutual understanding that transcended training, authority, and protocol. The spectators felt it too, as if the room itself had been transformed by this quiet display of connection. Emma's words continued to resonate. "He doesn't just bark or sniff," she added softly, her small eyes serious. "He helps people when they need it." The statement, though simple, encapsulated the very essence of Rex's work and the spirit of law enforcement itself. The courtroom murmured in agreement, understanding that the child had distilled a complex reality into a single clear truth. The innocence of her observation had bypassed all the layers of adult interpretation and directly reached the heart of the matter. Officer Thompson allowed himself a quiet sigh of pride. Years of rigorous training, countless missions, and high-pressure situations had taught him that Rex was exceptional, but even he had not anticipated the unique impact a small child could have. Emma's insight had given the courtroom a perspective that was at once astonishing, humbling, and inspiring. The dog, as if acknowledging her understanding, remained calm and attentive, offering subtle gestures of approval with a wag of his tail and a gentle nudge. Lava reached out to hold Emma's hand again, brushing a loose curl from her daughter's forehead. "You are very brave, honey," she whispered, "and very wise." Emma's small smile reflected a sense of pride and understanding far beyond her years. In that moment, she had realized something essential about the world, that courage and kindness were intertwined, and that standing up, even in a small way, could inspire everyone around you. The courtroom, filled with adults accustomed to hierarchy and formality, had been reminded of a fundamental truth. Wisdom and bravery are not limited by age or size. The 3-year-old girl, with her innocent clarity, had captured a universal understanding that even the most experienced professionals recognized as profound. The atmosphere remained charged with admiration, and even the quietest observers could not resist murmurs of approval. Emma's final gesture in that first remarkable encounter sealed the impression. She leaned in slightly, whispering to Rex with an intimate seriousness, "You're my hero." The dog, as if understanding, placed his massive paw gently near her tiny hand, offering a silent but profound acknowledgement. The entire courtroom felt the impact of the moment, the fusion of innocence, bravery, empathy, and trust that transcended language, authority, and training. Even after the minor legal proceedings continued, the memory of that statement lingered in the minds of everyone present. Judges, lawyers, officers, and spectators knew that this was not merely a fleeting display of childlike charm, but a moment of extraordinary insight. Emma had spoken a truth so clear, so simple, and so profoundly accurate that it would be recounted for years to come, both in Willow Creek and beyond. The minor theft case had, for a moment, become secondary. The real story was unfolding before everyone's eyes. A remarkable bond between a child and a dog, a testament to the power of empathy, and a reminder that wisdom can come from the most unexpected sources. Emma had transformed a routine courtroom appearance into a lesson in courage, kindness, and understanding, a lesson that no adult could ever forget. The courtroom had quieted, the usual hum of legal procedure replaced by a palpable sense of awe. Emma's words still hung in the air, resonating in the minds of everyone present. He helps people, not hurt them. Simple, innocent, yet unexpectedly profound. The statement had cut through the formalities of law and procedure, revealing a truth that adults often struggled to articulate. Witnesses, lawyers, and even the judge found themselves reflecting quietly on the words, realizing that this small child had captured the essence of justice and protection in a single, unassuming sentence. Emma sat down beside her mother, clutching Mr. Snuffles tightly against her chest. Her golden curls framed her flushed face, a mixture of excitement and shyness. She had spoken bravely, yet her small shoulders bore no pretense, just the innocence of a child who saw the world clearly and acted according to what she felt was right. Laura wrapped an arm around her, whispering soft praise. "You are amazing, Emma. So brave and so kind." Emma's lips curled into a shy smile, eyes sparkling with a sense of accomplishment. She had not fully realized the magnitude of what she had done, but she felt proud nonetheless. Across the courtroom, Officer Thompson watched with quiet pride. Years of experience had taught him to anticipate reactions to Rex, a seasoned and disciplined canine, yet even he had not predicted the profound impact a 3-year-old could have. The dog, lying calmly beside him, seemed aware of the significance of the moment. His ears twitched, tail swishing lazily, as though acknowledging the child's courage and the unusual bond that had formed. Officer Thompson allowed himself a rare, satisfied smile. This was what his work was truly about. Protecting and serving, yes, but also witnessing moments of connection and trust that could inspire far beyond the confines of duty. The spectators in the courtroom were equally affected. Whispered comments spread like a gentle current, a shared acknowledgement of the extraordinary nature of what had just occurred. "Did you hear what she said?" One woman murmured. "So young and yet so wise." A man nodded, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "It's incredible. A child just reminded us what all this is really about." The room, once formal and impersonal, had been transformed by the unassuming courage and insight of a small girl. Even seasoned professionals, accustomed to courtroom solemnity, felt a renewed sense of wonder at the simplicity and power of her words. The judge, often stoic and measured, allowed a small, reflective smile. He cleared his throat before speaking, his voice gentle but firm. "Let it be noted," he said, "that young Emma has provided an insight today that is both remarkable and enlightening. Her words remind us that the work we do here, the laws we enforce, and the procedures we follow are ultimately about protecting people helping, not harming." The statement drew quiet nods from lawyers and officers alike, a rare acknowledgement that wisdom often comes from unexpected places. Emma's father, Mark, felt a lump in his throat. Watching his daughter interact with Rex, and then articulate her understanding of his purpose, had left him stunned. He leaned toward Lavra, whispering, She sees things we adults often miss. She understands courage and kindness in a way we forget." Lavra squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening. They both recognized that this moment was more than a cute interaction. It was a lesson in empathy, clarity, and humanity. For the K9 unit, the day had become unforgettable as well. Rex, trained for obedience, detection, and protection, had adapted to the delicate presence of a tiny child with remarkable patience. His behavior reflected not just discipline, but understanding. Officer Thompson watched the dog, noting the subtle gestures, the careful placement of his paws, the gentle nudge with his nose, the attentive gaze. Rex had recognized Emma's bravery, her honesty, and her innate kindness, and he had responded accordingly. It was a quiet dance of trust, instinct, and empathy. The emotional ripple extended beyond the immediate courtroom. Witnesses who had come to testify about a minor theft found themselves reevaluating the events through a new lens. The incident, once mundane, now carried a deeper meaning. The role of protection, courage, and moral clarity in the simplest forms. People realized that heroism was not always measured by dramatic action or loud declarations, but often by quiet strength, empathy, and understanding. Emma, sensing the attention but remaining remarkably composed, reached out once more to Rex. She whispered softly, "I think you're the best helper ever." The dog responded with a soft whine, tail flicking in gentle acknowledgement. Spectators were drawn into the sincerity of the moment, and the emotional atmosphere deepened. Adults who had entered the courtroom focused on legal procedure now found themselves captivated by the bond between child and dog, touched by the purity and courage of Emma's understanding. Even the officers, typically trained to maintain stoicism, felt a surge of emotion. They recognized that this was a rare opportunity to witness not just the efficacy of a trained canine, but the extraordinary capacity of a child to inspire awe and reflection. Officer Thompson knelt down, patting Rex and offering Emma a quiet nod. "You've made a lot of people see things differently today," he said softly. Emma blinked, unsure of the weight of his words, but smiled, sensing approval and pride. The courtroom's energy had shifted entirely. A minor legal case had been transformed into a moment of collective reflection. Adults realized that their judgments, assumptions, and even their understanding of protection and bravery had been challenged not by a seasoned professional, but by a small, unassuming child. Emma had reminded them that courage was not measured by size or authority, but by honesty, empathy, and a willingness to face the unknown with trust. Lavra whispered to Emma, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's forehead, "You've touched so many people today. You've done something very special." Emma beamed, though her understanding of the larger impact was limited. She only knew that Rex was calm, kind, and somehow proud of her. That was enough. Her bond with the dog had become a source of courage, validation, and joy, and she felt a quiet confidence she had never experienced before. Even after the formal proceedings resumed, the emotional impact lingered. The minor theft case continued, but no one present could forget the lesson Emma had delivered so effortlessly. Witnesses carried the warmth of her words in their hearts. Lawyers reflected on the extraordinary insight a child could provide, and officers recognized the profound effects of empathy and patience in their work. The courtroom, often a space defined by rules, procedures, and decorum, had been transformed into a place where courage, understanding, and connection reigned supreme. As the day drew on, the story of the 3-year-old girl and the police dog spread quietly among the courthouse staff and the community. Emails and whispers circulated, recounting the remarkable words and interactions, emphasizing how a child had captured the essence of heroism and service in a single, profound statement. People recognized that this was more than a fleeting moment. It was a lesson that would remain long after the legal documents were filed, long after the minor theft case had been resolved. For Emma, the experience had been transformative. She had faced something unfamiliar and intimidating, engaged with a powerful yet gentle creature, and articulated truth that resonated far beyond her years. The bond she had formed with Rex was not only remarkable in its immediacy, but also in its potential to influence those who witnessed it. She had discovered courage, empathy, and the power of clear, honest expression, lessons that would guide her long into the future. And for Rex, the day had been extraordinary as well. The police dog, trained to serve and protect, had been given an opportunity to respond to empathy and trust rather than fear or command. The connection formed with a tiny child reinforced the deeper purpose of his role, one that went beyond enforcement, detection, or obedience. He had become not just a tool of law, but a partner in understanding, a bridge between authority and innocence, and a living testament to the profound possibilities of empathy. The courthouse would remember that day not for the minor crime, the procedural details, or even the outcome of the case, but for the quiet, extraordinary lesson delivered by a 3-year-old girl and a loyal, disciplined police dog. It was a moment that would ripple outward, touching hearts, inspiring courage, and reminding everyone present that sometimes the smallest voices carried the greatest wisdom. The courthouse was quiet again as the proceedings moved toward conclusion. The minor theft case, once the central focus of the day, had receded into the background, overshadowed by the extraordinary bond that had formed between Emma and Rex. Judge Harrison, a man known for his stern demeanor and procedural precision, paused to take in the room. Observing the lingering warmth in the faces of the spectators, officers, and legal staff, the courtroom had been transformed, and he could not help but acknowledge that this 3-year-old had left a mark far greater than any legal argument could. Emma sat beside her mother, eyes still sparkling with curiosity and joy. Rex remained seated near Officer Thompson, alert but relaxed, his calm presence grounding the room. The child's interactions had become the heartbeat of the courthouse, a reminder that compassion, courage, and connection could be far more compelling than any formal procedure. Emma, unaware of the depth of her influence, focused instead on the dog beside her, running a tiny hand along his fur with a confidence that belied her age. Judge Harrison cleared his throat, calling the courtroom to order. While this case involved a relatively minor offense, it has reminded us all of the essential values we must uphold: trust, protection, and understanding, he said, his voice carrying both authority and gentle reflection. He paused, glancing toward Emma and Rex. And sometimes, those lessons come from the most unexpected sources. The courtroom murmured in agreement, and Emma's mother whispered softly, "She's incredible." The minor theft case concluded with a fair resolution, the responsible party accepting accountability under the law. Yet the outcome of the case itself felt almost secondary compared to the larger lesson Emma had provided. Witnesses, lawyers, and officers alike recognized that her presence had reshaped the energy of the room, creating an atmosphere of empathy and respect. Even those who were hardened by years of courtroom procedure found themselves softened by her courage and insight. After the legal formalities were complete, Officer Thompson approached Emma and knelt to her level. "You know, Emma," he said gently, "you've helped everyone here see something very important. You've reminded us why we do what we do. And you've shown Rex that even the smallest people can be heroes too." Emma's eyes widened, and she gave a shy smile, brushing her tiny fingers against Rex's nose. The dog responded with a gentle nuzzle, tail flicking in quiet acknowledgement. The courtroom staff and spectators lingered longer than usual, reluctant to leave after witnessing such an extraordinary display of connection. Conversations buzzed softly, recounting Emma's words and her calm, intuitive bravery. One officer whispered to a colleague, "I've been on the force for over a decade, and I've never seen anything like this. That little girl? She sees things we sometimes miss." Another added, "It's amazing how a child can make us remember the heart of what we do." Outside the courthouse, word of the extraordinary courtroom interaction spread quickly. Local news outlets picked up the story, highlighting the unusual yet heartwarming events. Social media shared photos and accounts of Emma's courage, her statements about Rex, and the unexpected wisdom that flowed from a child barely old enough to speak in full sentences. The community was captivated, inspired by the story of a tiny girl who had interacted with a trained police dog and left an entire courtroom, adults included, stunned by her bravery and insight. Emma's family was invited to speak with the press. Lavra, holding Emma gently, explained the child's fascination with animals and her natural curiosity about helping others. "Emma has always been drawn to animals," she said. "She sees them as friends and helpers, and she understands kindness in a way that is so simple yet so profound. Today, she reminded all of us what courage and empathy really look like. Mark added, "We're proud of her, but honestly, we're also amazed. She has a gift for seeing the heart of things," and Rex responded in kind. For the police department, the day became a point of pride and reflection. Officer Thompson shared the story with his colleagues, emphasizing the importance of community engagement, empathy, and patience when working with civilians, particularly children. Rex did his job, he explained, but more importantly, he connected. And Emma reminded us that the smallest gestures can teach the biggest lessons. The department recognized the story as a morale booster and a reminder that their work, while often challenging and routine, had the power to touch lives in unexpected ways. Emma's influence extended beyond the courthouse. Local schools invited her to share her experience, framing it as a lesson in courage, empathy, and the bond between humans and animals. Teachers used the story to encourage students to face fears, engage with compassion, and appreciate the ways even the smallest among them could inspire change. Community leaders praised the girls' clarity and bravery, emphasizing the importance of listening to young voices and valuing their unique perspective. At home, Emma continued to speak of Rex with enthusiasm, recounting her observations and experiences in her own playful way. "He's brave like a superhero," she told her parents one evening. "And he listens to me. I think he knows I'm trying to help too." Laura and Mark exchanged glances, smiling at the child's simple wisdom. It was clear that Emma's experience had left a lasting impression, nurturing her empathy, confidence, and understanding of bravery. Meanwhile, Rex returned to his routine duties, but something had shifted in his behavior. The dog, accustomed to discipline and training, seemed more attentive to civilians, particularly children. Officer Thompson noted subtle changes: a calmer demeanor when interacting with the public, a more patient response to curious onlookers, and an almost instinctive understanding of the gentle approach required around young children. The bond with Emma had expanded beyond a single encounter, subtly influencing his behavior and interactions with the community. Weeks later, the story of Emma and Rex became a source of inspiration for the town of Willow Creek. Residents recounted the tale to friends and neighbors, emphasizing how a child's courage and insight had reminded them of the core values of empathy, protection, and service. Local businesses even displayed photographs and thank-you notes to both Emma and Rex, celebrating the unusual yet heartwarming connection that had captivated hearts across the community. The courthouse itself occasionally hosted follow-up visits from Emma, who delighted in seeing Rex and interacting with officers and staff. Each visit reinforced the lessons she had begun to understand. Bravery is not measured by size or age, and kindness and understanding can leave lasting impressions far beyond initial expectations. The adults who witnessed these moments continued to reflect on how a child's perspective could illuminate truths they often overlooked in the formalities of their work. By the time the case had fully concluded, a minor theft had become a footnote in a story far greater than legal proceedings. Emma's bravery and insight, combined with Rex's discipline and gentle nature, had created a narrative that transcended the courtroom, teaching lessons in courage, empathy, and trust to everyone involved. The impact was lasting. A small girl had reminded a town, a police department, and an entire courtroom that heroism often comes quietly, with clarity, compassion, and courage. As the sun set over Willow Creek, casting golden light across the courthouse steps, Emma and her parents left hand in hand, Rex walking calmly beside Officer Thompson. The town would remember the day not for the crime, not for the legal outcome, but for the extraordinary bond and the timeless lesson delivered by a 3-year-old girl who had spoken with clarity, kindness, and courage. And somewhere within the courthouse walls, the memory of a small hand resting on a massive dog's head, accompanied by the words, "He helps people, not hurt them," lingered a quiet, enduring reminder of the extraordinary power of empathy, innocence, and the connections that define us all. Weeks turned into months, but the story of Emma and Rex continued to ripple through Willow Creek. The courthouse, once merely a place of legal procedure, had become a symbol of an extraordinary lesson in courage, empathy, and connection. People would recall the day a 3-year-old girl spoke to a massive police dog with calm clarity, leaving the courtroom stunned. Children at local schools repeated the story in classrooms, and adults recounted it with a mixture of pride, awe, and fondness. The bond between Emma and Rex had become more than a fleeting moment. It had become a legend in the town. Emma's parents, Lavra and Mark, watched in amazement as the impact of their daughter's actions grew. What began as a simple visit to court to support a minor legal proceeding had transformed into a life-changing experience for their child, their community, and even the police department. "She may be small," Lavra said to Mark one evening, "but the courage she displayed and the wisdom in her words. It has changed so many lives." Mark nodded, silently agreeing. They both recognized that Emma had taught adults something they often overlooked. Bravery and wisdom are not measured by age or size, but by the heart and clarity of intention. At the police department, Officer Thompson reflected on the incident with newfound admiration for both his partner and the child. Rex had always been a loyal and highly trained officer, but the way he responded to Emma's gentle courage had reinforced the importance of empathy, patience, and adaptability in law enforcement. "It's remarkable," Officer Thompson explained to his colleagues one afternoon. "A child reminded us of the very essence of why we serve. And Rex, he showed that training alone isn't enough. Understanding and connection matter just as much." His colleagues nodded, recognizing that this rare interaction had altered their perspective on community engagement forever. The bond between Emma and Rex grew stronger with each passing day. Visits to the courthouse became routine, not because of legal necessity, but because the connection had intrinsic value. Emma would bring her favorite stuffed toy, Mr. Snuffles, and giggle as Rex gently nudged it with his nose, a playful acknowledgement of her presence. Officer Thompson often watched quietly from a distance, marveling at the unspoken communication between child and dog. It was a bond built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding, proof that even the smallest voices could command the attention and admiration of all. Schools in Willow Creek incorporated the story into lessons about courage, kindness, and empathy. Teachers emphasized how Emma had faced her fears, engaged with a creature far larger and more intimidating than herself, and delivered a profound statement about heroism. "He helps people, not hurt them." Children were encouraged to observe and emulate her courage in their own ways, learning that even small actions could create lasting change. The story transcended age, teaching a universal lesson about the power of clarity, empathy, and moral courage. The local news continued to feature the story, highlighting the unique relationship between Emma and Rex. Interviews with Lavra, Mark, and Officer Thompson provided context. But the central message remained the same. Bravery and wisdom are not defined by age or authority, but by the willingness to approach the world with honesty, empathy, and courage. The media coverage extended beyond Willow Creek, drawing attention from neighboring towns and eventually reaching statewide audiences. People marveled at the unlikely partnership between a 3-year-old child and a disciplined police dog, celebrating the story as a beacon of hope and inspiration. Emma herself remained blissfully unaware of the widespread attention. For her, Rex was simply a friend, a large, gentle, and reliable companion who listened without judgment. She continued to ask questions, laugh, and play during their visits. "Do you like cookies, Rex?" she would ask, giggling when the dog responded with a patient nuzzle. Every interaction reinforced the simple, profound truth she had demonstrated in the courtroom. Courage and kindness were not defined by circumstance, but by the choices one made and the empathy one showed. The police department used the story to promote community outreach programs, highlighting the importance of trust, understanding, and collaboration between law enforcement and civilians. Rex became a symbol not just of security and detection, but of the potential for connection and empathy to shape relationships between officers and the people they serve. Officer Thompson emphasized to recruits and new officers that even in high-stress situations, the ability to recognize and respond to empathy could have transformative effects, lessons they had learned firsthand through Emma's courage. The courtroom itself remembered the events fondly. The judge, lawyers, clerks, and staff often spoke about the day the small child had spoken to the massive dog with clarity, honesty, and insight. "I will never forget her words," the judge said to colleagues months later. "She reminded us of the humanity behind our work. It's something we all need to carry with us." Lawyers recalled how Emma's simple observation had reframed their understanding of protection and service. And court staff still smiled when recounting the awe that had filled the room that day. Even years later, the story endured. Emma's bravery, innocence, and clarity became a part of Willow Creek's collective memory. Children who had witnessed the story at school or through local news grew up inspired, carrying the lesson that courage, empathy, and understanding are far more powerful than authority or intimidation alone. Rex, now older but still attentive and disciplined, continued to serve in the police department, always responding with the gentle patience and insight first displayed with Emma. Their bond had not only changed a single day, but had created a lasting legacy of trust and connection. The emotional impact was felt most profoundly by Emma's family. Laura and Mark often reflected on how a simple act approaching a dog with curiosity and courage transformed their child's understanding of bravery and empathy. She learned that standing up, even in a small way, can inspire many, Mark said one evening. And she taught all of us to notice what's important: kindness, courage, and understanding. They recognized that Emma had not only grown through the experience, but had become a beacon of hope and inspiration to everyone around her. On one quiet afternoon, Emma sat with Rex in the backyard of their home. She gently stroked his head, whispering, "You're my best friend, and you help people like a superhero." Rex responded with a soft nuzzle and a wag of his tail. In that simple moment, the essence of their connection was perfectly captured: courage, empathy, and friendship intertwined, unspoken yet fully understood. Emma's small voice and the dog's gentle responses had created a story that would be told for generations. Not because of dramatic events or heroic feats, but because of the quiet, profound lesson they shared about trust, kindness, and the courage to face the world with an open heart. The town of Willow Creek honored their story in small but meaningful ways. Local artists created murals depicting a tiny girl beside a large, attentive police dog. Schools held reading sessions where children could recount the story, discussing its lessons about bravery, empathy, and moral clarity. The police department used the story as a guiding example for community engagement, training new recruits to approach their work with patience, understanding, and a focus on connection. The impact of Emma and Rex's bond had grown far beyond the courthouse walls, inspiring a culture of empathy and courage throughout the town. And so, the story of a 3-year-old girl who met a police dog in court and spoke with clarity that left everyone stunned lived on. It was a story not of crime or punishment, but of connection, understanding, and the transformative power of empathy. Emma and Rex became more than a child and a dog. They became symbols of what courage looks like when combined with kindness, what heroism means when expressed through compassion, and what lasting impact even the smallest voices can have. The lesson endured. Bravery is not measured by size authority, or age. True courage comes from understanding, empathy, and the willingness to face the unknown with an open heart. Emma had shown it through her words and actions, and Rex had demonstrated it through his gentle responsiveness. Together, they created a legacy that would inspire Willow Creek for generations. A timeless story of friendship, courage, and the extraordinary power of a child's voice. As the sun set over the quiet town, casting golden light over the courthouse steps and the streets of Willow Creek, Emma and her family walked home hand in hand, Rex beside them. The story of that remarkable day would live forever, reminding everyone who heard it that courage and kindness could change the world, one small act at a time.